One South American country is canceling its easy permanent residence program that people have been using for years, and I'm going to tell you the latest. Paraguay has been a place people have gone for years to get permanent residence in a South American country to just keep in their back pocket, or even in some cases to live in on a tax-friendly basis. And the government recently announced that they're suspending, which means probably canceling, this self-sufficient permit. How residence permits generally work in Latin America is based on income. I've always said if Asia is based on wealth, Latin America is based on income. And so from Mexico down to Uruguay and Chile, the general principle in many Latin American countries is if you can show income from a business, certainly from a pension, you can get a residence permit. Many countries have other ways to get in by buying real estate, for example, or putting money in the bank, but you can get in without making any direct investment at all as long as you have money. That's how they know that you're not broke, because obviously no country wants broke people. What Paraguay did is this small landlocked country in southern South America is they said, put money in one of our banks. And this has been going on for a long, long time. It's been a widely searched topic on the internet, Paraguay permanent residence. The current number is 32 million Paraguay guaranis, that's their currency, and it equals $4,444 as I'm sitting here. That's how much money you had to bring, convert into local currency, and put in a Paraguayan bank, and you just let the money sit there, and that meant to them, okay, this person is of independent means, they don't need the government for support. I mean, what a small amount to show that you're independent, but it's an affordable place, and so they would grant you permanent residence in exchange for doing that. You didn't really need anything else other than you had to have, a good passport, and you would get permanent residence. Now, historically, what happened years ago is people would get that, and there wasn't really much direction in terms of the naturalization law for people who wanted to eventually become Paraguayan citizens. So people would go there, put their money in the bank, spend a couple days, maybe come back every once in a while, and after 3 days, come back and apply for Paraguayan citizenship. And they would get a passport, and it's really not a bad passport. You have access to all of South America through Mercosur, and special privileges there. You can go all over Europe. It's a pretty darn good passport for a country that no one's ever heard of. And the bonus is, in these crazy times that we're living in, you're far away from it all. There's plenty of cheap arable land. I mean, it's just a whole different way of living. So that you could have that in your back pocket, first as a residence, then as a citizenship. Then there was a scandal a number of years ago. Even the FBI got involved. And that's why, as the goody two-shoes of the offshore business, I tell you, stay away from this shady stuff, because who knows what could happen and who knows what you could get swept up into. But after that, they really moved it towards, we don't want to naturalize people unless they're actually living there. That continues to be a misconception among some folks today, where just as I said many years ago that Uruguay wouldn't naturalize people on the basis of a paper residence, right? You have to actually live there to become Uruguayan. Paraguay went the same direction. And so it actually became harder to get citizenship in Paraguay than, let's say, nearby Argentina, because perhaps Argentina in some cases would allow more flexibility. Paraguay generally didn't. Part of that is the challenge of going to a small country that has to answer to people like the FBI, and they don't want their country to be seen as a place where everyone can just go and easily get citizenship and flout the rules of the rest of the world. But that's what Paraguay was. But even as they stopped what we call paper residence, this idea of getting a residence permit, not being there, and then getting citizenship later, they still allowed you to go and put your $4,444 in the bank and get your permanent residence, and that would be a great thing to have in your back pocket. If you ever chose to live there for a couple of years, you could apply for that great second passport. But if you didn't live there, just keep your money in the bank, keep the residence permit, go every once in a while, make sure you stay active, and you would have permanent residence, which, by the way, if you are from a country which doesn't allow dual citizenship, getting permanent residence that's only always a couple of years away from becoming a dual citizenship, if your country allows that, or if you want to leave your country, not a bad thing to have. And so the cost is basically nothing, right? Hire a lawyer, or if you want to be frustrated, don't hire a lawyer, and put your money in the bank. And so now the government has suspended that option as they've gone through and done a whole reworking of the immigration laws. Now there's a few pros. They are getting rid of some kind of outdated verbiage in the immigration law. So if you have a history of prostitution, or if you have like a whooping cough or something like that, that part's been stricken. So whooping cough and prostitutes and other undesirables will now be allowed in because they've just gotten rid of that part, which was written, I guess, many, many decades ago. But the bad part is that they are very likely at this point getting rid of the ability to use this independent means visa to put only a few $1,000s in the bank and get a residence permit. There will be an option for folks who are going to invest in businesses or have some kind of business activity to invest about $70,000. That will allow you to jump under these new laws that they're putting together directly into permanent residence. And so we'll see, as always, how that unfolds. Potentially that could be a business you start, or you could find some other business. There are, no doubt, if you're interested in frontier markets, many, many business opportunities at low prices in Paraguay. And so if you've got $70,000, then you'll still be able to jump to permanent residence. Others, in what they're going to be figuring out, will have to start with temporary residence, and that often involves perhaps more time commitment or other issues. You're not going to be able to get to citizenship as quickly. We'll see what all comes of it. But the bottom line is that you want to take advantage of opportunities while they exist. I have permanent residence, for example, in Colombia. That program was recently canceled, but yet I'm still grandfathered in, even though I'm swapping my visa over to a new passport, and they're doing basically a visa swap for everybody. You still get to keep what you already have. And so the deal is, if you find, especially $4,444, and you want to build a residence portfolio, and you want to give yourself at least optionality for future citizenship, depending on what might happen, you want to take advantage of all these options, right? We've used this phrase tunnels to talk about opening offshore bank accounts at very low prices, knowing that you can always fund a bank account with as much money as you want. You can go to a country like Paraguay and open a bank account with a few $1,000s. Ecuador, Georgia, Armenia, Cambodia have become harder, but still possible in some circumstances. Portugal even. These are places where as a non-resident you can go and open bank accounts and put in a small amount of money, knowing that in the future, if you wanted to put a large amount of money, you could do that. Paraguay's permanent residence was basically that. You could go and, for very little effort, get this permanent residence, which means you could always go there, which means if your passport falls out of favor, which means if there's another pandemic, which means who knows what could happen, and you couldn't otherwise get in, or you could only get in on a short-term tourist visa, and then they weren't, letting people stay, kind of like what Mexico's done, where Mexico is really asking people, like, how long are you going to stay here? Mexico does not want people coming and staying for 6 months at a time, leaving for a day and coming back, and essentially just living in Mexico. They want people to get residence permits, and yet the conditions for what it takes to get a residence permit can change at any time, as has just happened in Paraguay. And so these are the kinds of permits that you want to grab while you can. $70,000 really isn't that bad to have permanent residence in a South American country. I mean, Paraguay certainly is very much a frontier market and very much undeveloped for somebody who wants to invest in uncorrelated markets that probably aren't going to follow what happens in the Western world that much. For someone who wants a backup plan in a place that's far away from whatever blast zone may happen in the Northern Hemisphere, Paraguay is still a great deal. But you've missed yet another opportunity for yet another program that's being closed down at a low price, and they're bringing back one at a higher price. These programs, paper residences, where you don't have to live somewhere but you get citizenship, those are constantly going away. There's a few left that we work with. These programs where you just go right to permanent residence, constantly going away. And anything where all you need is $4,000 is going to go away. And so Latin America is a great place to get residence permits. I'm not saying to get endless residence permits that you don't need. If you like Latin America, get a couple. But if you're going to be in that area, Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, all offer residence. Brazil, perhaps you need to make an investment. But Argentina, Uruguay, just show you have money. Paraguay, okay, now maybe it's $70,000. You could, if that's the area you want to be in, get all 4 residence permits, bounce between them, and potentially be able to get 1 or 2 citizenships out of it in the coming 3 or 4 years. But figure out which programs you want. Figure out what part of the world you want to be in. Figure out what parts of the world you want to protect yourself. Even if you think, I want to live in Europe. You know what? I've got Europeans who are saying, I'd like to get that Paraguayan permanent residence because if things go bad in Europe, I want a place to live that's, again, far away from it all and that has a good tax policy and where I can become a citizen. There's not that many countries where you can get a really high-quality passport in only 3 years by living there and not paying much, if any, tax. That's still Paraguay, but the cost to get in now went up. If you're a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, it's not as big of a deal, but I'll tell you, you're less likely to invest $70,000 in a business than you are $4,000 in a bank account. I don't care how much money you have. It just sounds like more work. It sounds more uncertain. And so you could have gotten it earlier and you would have been grandfathered in.